Hey, everybody, welcome. Come on in and grab a seat. We are so happy that you're here with us this morning. My name is Sean Prokus, and I'm the pastor of digital ministries here at Northside. I just celebrated 1 year here, so pretty neat. Yeah, that's good. That's good. They haven't kicked me out yet. So usually I'm hiding out in my office actually on Sunday mornings running the online services. So you may have talked to me digitally, and yet I may have not been able to put a chat to a face. So just one announcement here before we get going. Wanted to let you guys know that we have this thing called the BLC, which is it stands for the Biblical Leadership Community, that we offer, and it's usually on the first Thursday of each month at 6:30 a.m. Sorry if you're not a morning person, but it's worth getting up for. If you registered for coming today, you'll get an email here really soon with details coming, but August the 4th at 6:30. This first Thursday of August, we're going to have that. And part of the reason why we're announcing it is, first of all, you're invited. But second of all, we're beginning to kick off a new study on the book of Titus. And so we're going to spend 3 months in Titus. It's just once a month. We're going to handle one chapter a month. And the book of Titus is fantastic. It'll be a great kind of exegetical walk through the Bible study, verse by verse, on leadership. So if you didn't register for today and didn't get the email, just remember August the 6th at 6:30 a.m. in this room. Come join us. We'd love to have you. And if you did register, you're going to get that email. So, well, like I told you, I just moved to this area about a year ago. And I was familiar with the name Dave Stone because I've been working for a number of years at a church before I came here called Eastview Christian Church. And Dave is kind of known in our church movement. So I knew of him. And then I moved to this area. And I discovered there's 3 popular people. First of all, there's Colonel Sanders. Second of all, there's Muhammad Ali. And then from what I hear, there's Dave Stone. So apparently he can fry things better. He's a better fighter, from what I hear. And so he's quite an impressive guy. But Dave Stone, he needs no introduction. You guys know, if you're here, probably, that he was the preaching pastor and lead pastor at Southeast Christian Church for 30 years. Recently, he's retired, and in his retirement, he is not retired. If you know that about a preacher, when they retire, they don't retire. More than anything else, they just fire up their engine and do it in some different ways. So he's traveling throughout the country, teaching, leading, and doing more great things than I could probably tell you about, and I don't want to take away a lot of time from him. And so would you guys please welcome the man who needs no introduction, Dave Stone.
I'll tell you. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, buddy. Wow, that was quite an introduction. I am not going to hang out with the Sanders family or Muhammad Ali's family after that introduction. Sean, thank you. And congratulations on having a year under your belt. That's a good feeling. You kind of feel like you're kind of incorporated and part of the family after you've been there for a year. It's always good to be here at Northside. Just by way of introduction of how special this church is to me, when I retired from Southeast 3 years ago, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and I preached most every weekend for that first year, but I was also trying to stay away from Southeast and give Kyle Eidelman some good space as he kind of dove into things. And so my wife and I, on the weekends where I wasn't preaching, we would drive over here and worship over here. And so that tells you what I think of this church, to drive. I think I live 39 minutes away from here. And at least that's not counting, but that's what I clocked it at this morning. But I did pass a few airplanes on my way, so, but that's another issue. So anyway, that should let you know what I think of Nate. I've been friends with George for 35 years. We did some revivals together. You remember what a revival is, some of you? Yeah. So that was a long time ago, but George was one of those multi-talented guys. So George would actually lead the worship. And, he could preach, he could lead the worship. He's one of those guys, kind of, you're sick of because they got so many talents. And lots of times he would do the worship and the singing and lead that, and I would end up preaching, and we'd be out someplace far, far away from here. So I fell in love with Nate as soon as I met him, and what a sharp guy, and I know a number of your staff and your elders, and so I'm honored to get to be here with you all today. And thank you. A lot of places you could be on a Saturday morning, and the fact that you all are here tells me that you're hungry, that you want to learn, that you want to grow in your faith. And this is what I have entitled this talk. And I've never done this talk, so I'm kind of excited about it because it's kind of fresh to me. And I've entitled it, for those of you who like to take notes, People Matter, and the subtitle is Loving Others Well. And it doesn't matter. Brandon, how old are you? 13. Brandon here, he's 13 years old. I saw another person in here who was 104. Okay, I won't point them out. But all the wide gamut of ages, backgrounds, and everything I'm going to say to you today easily can transfer into your own situation. And I'm going to tell you a lot of stories, all right? When I tell you these stories, I do not want you to say, oh, well, that's kind of outlandish, or, oh, that would never happen. Well, I'm telling you what, if you pray and if you look for opportunities, some really crazy things can happen in your life, and God can do some amazing things. I'm going to tell you some stories of different people who I look up to when it comes to loving others well. I'll tell you some personal stories. I'll tell you some where things have worked out well in those stories. I'll also tell you some where I'm still waiting, and it's been years and years. I drove past the place coming in here this morning. I'll get choked up a bunch too. But a guy that we have been working on and pouring into for 11 years, and just hoping that there will be some fruit from that relationship. But what we're going to discover today is when we love others well, we're representing Jesus Christ. And good things happen when we represent Jesus Christ, okay? We will end today right at 11:30, so you don't have to be worrying about watching the clock. I'll watch the clock for us. We may have some time the last few minutes for question and answer. We might not. Now that I say that, I know how I usually am, and now that I've locked in on 11:30, we'll see how that goes. But let me begin by telling you about a guy named Bill Murray. How many of you all like Bill Murray's movies? Right? Jacqueline, you like him. Bill is one of my favorite actors of all time. It's probably because of the intellectual roles that he's taken in those deep thrillers such as Caddyshack, Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, or my personal favorite of all time, What About Bob? And I don't know if you all have ever seen What About Bob, but it's a classic, so give yourself a chance to watch that. But if you do any research on Bill Murray, there's a common thread that pops up, and that is he likes to live his life where he invests in people and he puts the spotlight on them. And what he likes to do is he thoroughly enjoys creating memorable moments for total strangers, and he goes out of his way to just encourage people on a daily basis in random and significant ways. One time, Bill Murray was in a city. He was driving along. He saw a street that was filled with a lot of cars, and he deduced that there must be a party that was going on. And so he just parked, and tons of people were pouring into this house. And so he just went in, and people are like, I had no idea they know Bill Murray. So he's wandering around. So finally he says, hey, where's the host and hostess here? He said, somebody said, well, they're in the kitchen, actually. And he went in there, and they were doing dishes. Can you imagine that? And he said, hey, I just came to your all's party. And they're like, what is he doing here? And he said, what are you all doing? He said, well, we're doing dishes. We don't have enough plates to keep up with all the people who are here. He said, I don't know anybody who's here. He said, why don't you all go and be with your friends, and I'll do the dishes, because I know how to do the dishes. So he sent them out. He did all the dishes until he got all of them all caught up, and then as quietly as he came, that's how he left. And that's a trademark of Bill Murray. He just looks for opportunities. One time, he saw a bunch of roadies that were putting sound equipment into a U-Haul, and they were getting ready. And so he just hopped in, and he got in the line carrying stuff. And all of a sudden, like, what is Bill Murray doing here? And he said, well, I'm a roadie, all right? They went to this house, and he said, I'm going to be with you guys tonight. And he grabbed a tambourine, and so the whole night while they were playing in this nice, large neighborhood in the backyard, he played the tambourine on every song. And the police came to the house because the neighbors had complained about the sound. And they came to the front door and said, hey, you're going to have to turn the sound down. We got a lot of complaints from neighbors. And this guy says, hey, it's one of the new guys in the band. And blamed it on Bill Murray. And so they're like, oh, yeah, right. Bill Murray is playing the tambourine. No, really, he's really here. So they come in. They see Bill Murray up there playing the tambourine. And so the cops bring him over, and they get a selfie with him, right? Don't do anything with the noise and just head on out, right? So there's story after story. One time he saw a couple getting engaged, so he hopped out of his car and just stood in the background, for their engagement pictures, and then ended up posing with them for their engagement. One of my favorite stories is he was at a busy bar one time, and he could tell that they were rather understaffed, and so he got up and he went back behind the counter and said, hey, listen, I'll bartend for you tonight. And they said, well, have you ever bartended before? He said, no, I haven't, okay? But he took orders all night and made drinks all night. Not one person got what they ordered, but they all had a memorable night that they will never forget. My all-time favorite story is when he landed one time in the San Francisco airport, and he had a comedy thing he was doing 90 minutes away, and it was late at night. He got talking with the cab driver that was driving him this 90 minutes, and he said to him from the back seat, he said, what is it that you like to do? He said, I like to play the saxophone. He said, are you any good at it? He said, no. He said, how can you be any good at it when I drive a cab 14 hours a day and I don't ever have any chance to practice? He said, will you have your saxophone with you now? He said, well, yeah, it's in the trunk of the car. And he said, well, get out and let me see it. So the guy went back, and as he's opening up the trunk, Bill Murray slides out of the back seat, hops in the driver's seat, and locks all the doors so he can't get in the front seat. The guy said, what are you doing? He said, hey, he said, just go sit in the back seat. He said, why? He said, bring your saxophone with you. He said, you got 90 minutes to practice. And found out later that he stopped along an area where they play a lot of blues music, and he took the guy there, and they went in, and he had the guy play for him some, and then got back in the car, and Bill Murray drove the rest of the way to where he was going. And the way he does it, he does these things lots of times just as drive-bys. Hops in and hops out, and no fanfare. And someone heard about that story from the saxophone cab driver, right? And so they asked Bill Murray. They said, why did you do that? And he said, well, anyone would have done that. He said, it's just 2 + 2. He said, I don't know how to play the saxophone, but he said, I do know how to drive a car. And the guy never gets a chance to practice. And he said, anybody would have done it. I don't know if anybody would have done it. But my point is, he was on the lookout time and time again to somehow put a smile on someone's face, somehow to go out of his way to brighten someone's day. Now, most celebrities tend to use their fame or their money to pull away from people due to how exhausting it is. Everybody that they cross paths with wants to take a picture with them, or somebody wants a piece of them. But Bill Murray realizes that he can use his notoriety to put the spotlight on someone else and to lift up their spirits and to encourage others. The Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 10, says, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. And if I were to condense 90 minutes into one phrase, it would be this phrase: honor one another above yourself. And when you do that, people will see Jesus Christ in you. I don't know what the next step will be. I don't know what good fruit will come of that. But when you do that, people will see Jesus. Now, I don't know what Bill Murray's motivation is. I really don't know, okay? I don't think he's a believer. But here's my point. If he goes to that trouble to invest in the lives of others and to honor others above himself, and let's say he's not a believer, then how much more should we be doing that? How much more should we be looking for those opportunities to be able to say, okay, this is an opportunity, this is something that I can do. None of the things he did were huge things. They were just everyday things, but what he did was he honored others above himself. Now, you know that there are a variety of places in the New Testament where the phrase one another is said, okay? I just read for you a verse in the Bible that says, honor one another. There are numerous commands where we are told there are one another statement. So holler some of them out. Just give me some of what those might be. Consider others better than yourself. Good. Somebody else. Think of commands that we're told to do in our interaction with others. Love one another. Thank you. Love your neighbor as yourself. Good. Somebody else. Be kind to one another. Great. Love is patient. Be patient with one another. I need somebody to come through for this group right here. Okay? This group has been silent. You're deep in thoughts. Let's see. Give me another one another. Yes, in the back. I see a hand. Pray for one another, right? And it goes through several different things. Forgive one another. Oh, now they're hot. Look at them now. I can't shut them up now. Pray for one another. Forgive one another. Bible says confront one another, right? I mean, there's all sorts of different one another statements. Encourage one another, and all the more as we see the day approaching. Serve one another in love. I mean, we could go down, there's around 12 or 13 different ones, right? And so these are all one another things. I think the umbrella over all of them could be either love one another or honor one another above ourselves. We live in a world where everything comes back to us. And somehow we see everything in life coming back at us and how it relates to me, what I have to do with it, and how it pertains to me. Are things going to be better for me if I do this or that? And God's way is so different. It's don't take the spotlight on yourself, put it on somebody else. Go out of your way for someone else. A good example, biblical example that people matter is found in Mark chapter 5. And in Mark 5, there's this time when Jairus, who is an important and influential synagogue ruler, comes to Jesus and begs him to come to his house because his daughter is gravely ill. And he believes that Jesus can heal her. And so without hesitation, Jesus goes with him, and this throng of people join in the journey so that they can have a front row seat to see what it is that God is going to do through Jesus, or what Jesus is going to do. Now, as soon as he says that, you would think that the very next verse in Mark 5 would read, knowing that every second counted and that this child's life hung in the balance, Jesus began running to Jairus' house. Nothing could slow him down. That's what you think the next verse would say, right? But it doesn't say that. Instead, it's going to tell us that while they are en route to this emergency where someone is dying, there's another gal who Jesus also needed to see and love. Who, you ask? Well, she is a woman that we would have never remembered had she not crossed the path of one that we can never forget. We don't know her name because the Bible doesn't tell us her name. She remains one of those vast company of mortals who for a moment found her immortality and light in the company of Jesus Christ. But who she was not nearly as important as why she had come. if I can just touch the hem of his garment, maybe then I'll be healed. And she suffered from an incurable hemorrhage that had robbed her of her vitality and health for 12 years. She had this issue of blood that would not stop. And so for 12 years, she'd seen doctors, and doctors would say, you're getting worse rather than better. And 12 years of trying all sorts of miracle cures and remedies, and yet nothing would work. And finally, one day when she was at the end of her rope, she thought, you know what? Maybe there's power in them and Jesus Christ that everybody's talking about. Maybe he'll have time for me. And so she heard where he was going to be, and she went toward where he was going to be. And she saw him in the distance, knotted and clothed with a mass of people all around him. And she saw him, and she said, there's power in that man, and maybe it even stretches to his garment. And so she gathers up her courage, and she goes up to where he is walking, and at the last second, she knifes her shoulder in between two burly fishermen, and she reaches out, and she touches the hem of his garment, and then she fades back into the anonymity of the crowd. The Gospel of Mark says, immediately she knew. Gone was that perpetual sense of pain, replaced with an inward sense of healing. And for the very first time in a dozen years, she could look the world straight in the eyes, for she had touched a great physician and she would never be the same again. Amen. But Jesus, with that unassuming manner, which he so often liked to take, suddenly turned in the crowd and he said, hey, who touched me? And the disciples are cracking up laughing, saying, you got to be kidding me. Who touched me? Everyone touched you. Everyone is wanting a piece of you. Everyone is around you. But Jesus could always distinguish between the casual jostling of the crowd and the purposeful touch of someone in need. And power had gone from him, and he would find the person who had claimed it. And so, looking at the crowd, one by one, until finally his eyes fell on hers. And the woman falls in the ground in a heap right before him. And she blurts out the entire story. And she tells everyone what has happened and the change that has happened and of her 12-year struggle. It had to be a little embarrassing, but she didn't care because she knew she had been changed from within. And Jesus looks at her and he says, daughter. This is the only time in all the Bible where Jesus ever refers to a person and calls her daughter. In one word, he reveals who she is and who he is to her. Amen. He says, daughter, your faith, not my garment, but your faith has made you well. Go now and be freed from your suffering. And in this story, Jesus knew that many years of physical isolation could only leave a gaping wound of emotional separation. And so he looks for her in that crowd. And he looks for her like he looks for you. In Luke's account of the exact same story, there's this really cool verse as Luke retells the story. In Luke chapter 8, verse 47, it's when Jesus is looking at the crowd after he says, who touched me? Luke 8:47 says, then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. You want to write a phrase down. Seeing that she could not go unnoticed. What a description of the one who loves so well. Jesus was always on the lookout to pour into the lives of others in any way that they needed. Could that be said of you? I'm going to divide this talk into three different areas, and this leads us to the first one, and that is look for people. Just be on the lookout. Just look for people. And that's what Jesus was doing. He looked at every single person until he finally could go deeper with that individual. Our problem is we get so wrapped up in what we have going that day on our to-do list or wherever it is that we're in a hurry. Take the kids here, pick up the grandkids there, get home after my part-time job and go home so I can have dinner with my parents. And we're always in a rush. We're doing something, right? And yet, when we do that and we get so busy, we don't have time to look for others. And so here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. I started praying this prayer some time ago, but I pray it regularly, but I got to be honest, I don't pray it daily. But every time I pray it, God comes through. But in the morning, sometimes I'll pray this prayer. Lord, cross my path with someone who can feel your love through the way I talk or act to them. Intersect my life with someone who just needs to be spiritually encouraged today. I used to work at a Bible college in Cincinnati, and I worked as a recruiter there. And if I had a high school senior that was on campus visiting, I would walk them around the campus. And if I knew they were looking at another campus or another college, and it was a larger university, when I would sit down with the parents and I would sit down with that student, I'd say, what stood out to you as you walked around the campus with me? And usually it's the very first thing they'd say. Well, I've been to this campus, I've been to that campus, and everybody as they walk around, they look down. But here people looked up and they said something to me. And they said hi, or they said, how are you? Some people said, hey, are you visiting here? You ever been here before? And the whole family would be nodding, and they said, well, that never happens. Well, as Christ followers, that's the way it should be. They should be able to notice that there's something distinct and there's something different. And so some of it is just as simple. It's not profound stuff. You're going to walk out and say, oh, Dave had some really heavy stuff. Yeah. Oh, really? I didn't get to go today. What did he say? He said we need to look up as we're walking around places. Oh, it was deep. It was really good. Really good. Wow. Yeah. You spent an hour and a half? Yeah, that was the best of it right there. It was just to look up as you're walking. Oh, deep. Wow, deep stuff. Okay? I know it sounds crazy, but if you do it, it will revolutionize your life. You see, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the sermon this weekend about the Good Samaritan. I'm going to talk about the Good Samaritan. And there are just things that we can do. And when I start talking about this part of walking across where you work or the campus where you work or the neighborhood in which you live and seeing something out in that neighborhood, I just want you to think about this part that we're talking about right now of looking up and looking out and caring about people. You know, I use Bill Murray as an example. I'm not suggesting that we make wristbands, WWBD. I'm not saying that. Because I don't know what his motivation is. But if we were to start looking up, it would change things. If we started looking for people in need. How many of y'all like to walk? I mean, you walk some, let's go in the neighborhood and let's walk. You know what you can do? We made a map of our neighborhood, and we tried to learn the names of the people and where they lived. And so as we would walk sometimes my wife and I would just say, okay, well, this time let's just pray for people. And so you start to kind of learn those spots and you kind of fill in those blanks. You know what? Most people cannot name the 3 or 4 houses or apartments or condos that are right around them. And if you walked away today and just said, I'm just going to learn the names of the people who are around me so that I can be praying for them as I come into my apartment or as I walk or around. I know these things sound simple, but that's having the eyes of Christ, and it's being on the lookout. And I think prayer is the key. I was on a Zoom call yesterday with a group of people that we mentor younger people in ministry. And one of the people who was on there was a gal from Chicago. And we were sharing different things that we've learned from the Lord this summer. And she said, it's not a new learning. It's just something that I have to constantly be reminded of, and that is that I have to be open to the promptings of the Holy Spirit. And she said, I was driving to church by myself last week, and I thought, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do today? And she said, I felt like he kind of just needled his way in of saying, so many times you just go into church and you sit by yourself and then you leave. She said, I felt like God was saying to me, find somebody else who's sitting alone. And so she said, so that's what I did. And I sat beside someone who was there by herself. And she said, I knew this lady. I knew some of the struggles she'd been through. And she said, as a result of that, we got to talking. And she said, I got to have breakfast with her later in the week. And we got in a much deeper conversation, all because God laid that on my heart on Sunday when I was pulling into church. Again, it's not rocket science, but it's just being on the lookout. Let me tell you about a friend my wife and I have. Her name's Hannah. She lives in Nashville, Tennessee. She's in her late 20s. She's a singer. She lives in Tennessee. Prior to all of the COVID crisis, she was about to get on a flight, and she had been praying in the gate area, just asking the Lord, okay, how do you want to use me today? How can you use me to plant a seed or to spiritually encourage someone? And she said that she felt like the Spirit was impressing on her that she was supposed to talk to the person, whoever was seated beside her, and just to share Christ with them. Well, she got on the plane, and no one sat beside her. And she thought, okay, well, I guess I misunderstood that. And she kept waiting. It was time for them to leave. And all of a sudden, it was about that time, a young gal came walking on the plane. She had bright blue hair and came walking all the way to the back and kind of just was mad at the world and threw her backpack down and just sat there right next to Hannah and kind of folded her arms and said everything about her. Said, don't talk to me, leave me alone. I want to be left alone. And Hannah said, I looked up at the Lord like, really? This is who you want me to talk to, right? And she's like, oh, I can't believe this. So she's having this tug of war with the Lord, like, I don't want to talk to her. This would be a bad thing. She doesn't want me to talk to her, obviously. But after the plane took off, Hannah started talking with her. And the first line that she said to her was, she said, I'm fascinated by your hair, which was a true statement. And she said, I'm fascinated. She said, how did you decide on the color? Did you consider different colors? And the gal began to warm up. And she began to talk about how she arrived on this particular shade of the bright blue. And that got them talking. And pretty soon the gal wouldn't come up for air. And she just kept on talking. And Hannah learned through the flight that she was going through a divorce right then. And she had a 4-year-old. She said, I'm flying to my hometown. Somebody is watching my 4-year-old, and I'm flying back to my hometown to try to figure out where it is that we're supposed to live and whether or not I should ask my parents if I can come back home to live with them. She said, I don't know how they'll respond. She said, we've had some conflict in the past. She said, I've made some big mistakes. She said, I don't know if they'll take me back. And Hannah said that she looked at her and she said, well, God wants you to have a spirit of humility and a repentant spirit. And the whole time they were talking, Hannah told us later that she felt like God was bringing to her mind over and over again, Jeremiah 29:11. Jeremiah 29:11, say that to her. And Hannah said, I just kept resisting that, thinking, oh no, that's a scripture that everybody says. They use it out of context. I'm not going to say it. And so while she's listening to this gal, she's having this argument with the Holy Spirit, right? And it's going back and forth. And she said, finally, I just gave up. And when that prompting didn't go away, reluctantly, I said to the girl, she said, well, you know that God has plans for you. She said, in the Bible, in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, He says, "For you know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, but to give you hope, to give you a future." And when Hannah quoted that verse, the gal just began bawling. And she just started crying uncontrollably. And Hannah quickly apologized to her and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if I bothered you or if I offended you in some way." And the girl said, "No." She said, "I know that verse." She said, "A godly relative of mine always quoted that verse to me when I was a little girl." And she said, "I'm crying because before I got on this flight, I prayed to God. And I said if He was truly up there, that He would have someone specifically say to me, Jeremiah 29:11 today." And she said, if that happened, then I would know beyond any shadow of a doubt that I was supposed to go back to my parents and ask if I can come home. Only God. Our God is a powerful God, but our God is a personal God. And He is pursuing people. And sometimes He will use you as you intersect your life with that person that day. I cannot tell you how many times I've had a person say, I can't believe this is happening. I was in a Dollar General, which is the one with the yellow and black print. Is that Dollar General or is that Dollar Store? Okay, it's a dollar something, okay? Well, we live in Simpsonville, Kentucky. There's not a whole lot going on in Simpsonville, all right? And so we needed some type of milk. I don't know, we needed milk some night. And it was on a Friday night, and I'm trying to find any place that is open within 10 miles of Simpsonville. You all can understand this, right? Joel and Sue. And so I look, Dollar, whatever it is open for another 7 minutes. So, great. So I fly into there. You know, we come in on 2 wheels. We get there at about 3 till 10. And, you know, so we rush in to get whatever this important commodity is that we have to get us through the night. And as we're walking in, I see a guy, I don't know how to describe this will sound terrible, kind of a shady character. And I see him staring at me. He's eyeballing me. So then he's eyeballing my wife. You know, you start eyeballing my wife, I'm going to eyeball you, right? Okay? So we go in, and my wife has assigned me to what I'm supposed to pick up, and she's got her assignment. And so I just said, hey, I said, keep your eye on that guy. She said, oh, yeah, I will. So she goes to get her commodity. I go to get whatever my commodity is I get. And I'm kind of keeping a check on her. Well, this dude comes down to the end of an aisle and kind of looks at me. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going to go down, but Lord, I'm ready to dive in, whatever it is, okay? You know, I'm going to grab some Wonder Bread and throw it at him or something, right? So I am ready. I'm keeping my eye on him. You all have been in this situation. Yeah, I'm kind of keeping my eye on him. He comes back again, so I kind of put myself, I'm like a mother bear. I kind of put myself in between where my wife is and where he is. And the guy comes walking up to me. He says, hey, are you Dave Stone? I said, yeah. He said, you baptized me about 20 years ago. He said, I'm really struggling with alcohol, and that's why I came in here. He said, would you pray for me? I said, I would love nothing more than to pray for you right here. So in the dollar place, I got my hand on him, and I'm praying for him. And I got to lift him before the Lord. He said, you know, I can't believe, he said, I haven't seen you in, he said, I've never seen you in probably 10 years. And he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, it's the only place that's open. I said, I've never been in this place. My wife comes in here, but I said, I know God wanted us to meet and run into each other. And there are just these divine appointments. Now, you want to know the kicker? That morning was my day off. My wife and I prayed that morning, Lord, will you intersect our path with someone today that we can encourage? And that night, an hour or so later when we went to sleep and when we prayed, we called off 11 different names of people that God had brought in our path that we had never met before. And we went through all 11 names of people that we'd met through the day, and this guy was the last guy. I'm just telling you, when you pray and when you look up and when you're ready, it's not always what you think it's going to be. I thought it was going to be something bad. And to watch that guy walk out of that place with nothing in his hands. I got his phone number. Got to stay in touch with him. You know, those are the opportunities that God puts before us. And I think at times he just looks at us and just says, will you just give me a chance? Will you just give me a chance to be God in your life and to show you that I really do care? There's not a person that you drive past on the road, walking along the street. There's not a person that you'll see in a restaurant that God loves any less than he loves you. And so we have to just start having the eyes of Christ and trying to take those things just one step further. Again, I just want to hold out to you all. I did nothing in that case. I'm thinking this is going to be a bad thing. I'm not taking the high road. I'm not Bill Murray in this case. I got my guard up. It's just the opposite. And yet God can break down those barriers in just a heartbeat. So we're going to look for people. And the key to looking for people, if you want to write this down, the key to looking for people is prayer. That's the key. The key comes back to prayer. When you bathe this in prayer and you say, Lord, bring people in my path, cross my path with these people, intersect my life with them, God will always come through and he will do that. So, God, through Christ, looked at this woman with this issue of blood for 12 years. Here's the second thing. Listen to people. What did Jesus do? Jesus looked until he saw this woman, and when she fell on the ground, he didn't say, hey, would you tell me your story? He didn't say that. She just blurted out the story. The guy at dollar store, Dollar General, dollar place, when I'm in that aisle and he comes up to me, I didn't say, hey, are you struggling with anything? You know, what's going on in your life? Tell me your story. He just blurted it out and volunteered it and said, I struggle with alcohol. That's why I'm in here. I need help. So people will be in our path, and then when we do get intersected with their life, the question is, will you listen to them? Will you give them the time of day? We're in a restaurant. I won't tell you the name of the restaurant because it's a unique restaurant, and I want to protect any anonymity of people, but we love to, I'm not one of these guys who at the restaurant, says, we're getting ready to have our prayer. It's fine if you do this. It's just not me. We're getting ready to have our prayer. Is there anything that we can pray for? Would you join us for prayer? I've got some friends that's what they do. That's great if that's what they choose to do, But I prefer to go a little slower, and sometimes, I'll say at the end of a meal, say, hey, let me know if we can ever be praying for you. It's a great inroad with people. So anyway, we're talking with this gal, and about halfway through the meal, we say, hey, we just want you to know, last few years, we feel like we've had some terrible servers in different places. They don't even give you the time of day. Yeah, what do you want? Okay, go fix it yourself, all right? I'm serious. I don't know how it's just a different world since COVID, So we say, hey, you are, Bree, you are amazing. We just want you to know you're doing a great job. And I think you're really going to do well in this industry because you're so accommodating, you're so helpful. And so we get talking to her some. And she serves our food. And I said, okay, Bree, I said, you got 30 seconds to tell me your life story. So, I say this sometimes to people. Sometimes they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. But she said, okay. I said, just 30 seconds. That's all I want. 30-second story. So I'm from Chicago. grew up in a very rough environment. And she said, I'm just so glad that I got out of there. I live in the south side of Chicago, and pretty rough life. And she said, I've lived here in Louisville for the past 2 years. And she said, and I just have taken in my 14 or 15-year-old niece, and she's living with me now. This gal's probably 27, 28 years old, okay? And I said, man, that is so nice of you to do that. Well, she comes back a few minutes later. I said, thank you for sharing your story. She comes back a few minutes later, and we said, we were just sitting here talking while we're eating, just saying how you are a very special young lady that you would take someone in at your age when you probably don't have the financial resources, and you're letting her live with you, and you're getting her to school, and you're doing all these different things. And she said this next line. She said pretty rough upbringing. People haven't always treated her the way they should. She said, I just wish somebody would have done it for me. And in that one phrase, she told us so much. She told us her story in that one phrase. And so we talked to her a little bit more, and you always leave them a nice tip. If you don't leave them a nice tip, it's never going to go anywhere, okay? So trust me, it's the greatest investment you'll ever make. So my wife and I, we carry cards with us for, it says something goofy on it, like if you're new to the area, or if we can ever help, or if you have a prayer request, here's our number. So I didn't have any of my cards with her. She had one of hers with her. I said, hey, Beth's got a card, and so said, just reach out to us sometime. And said, we'd love to stay in touch with you. So I know I'm taking too long telling you all this. Anyway, long story short, Beth gives her a card and, give her a hug and head on. Only time we've ever been to that restaurant in probably 12 years. Okay, we haven't been to that restaurant in 12 years, haven't been back since. But she texted Beth. And so now we got an interchange going, an exchange. And then I got to help her on something a month later. And then we both got to go over in her apartment and visit with her and help her on something she needs some help with. And this coming week, we're having lunch with her Wednesday, with her niece. And God just opens these doors. And you say, oh, well, okay, all right, thank you, Dave. These are some really cool stories. And we really enjoy sitting here watching you cry. It's a lot of fun, but you're a preacher. You're a pastor. You get to play the pastor card. I never play the pastor card. If I play the pastor card, I am history. If they find out I'm a preacher, oh, okay. Yeah. Walk away, retreat. You all have a definite advantage. You guys are sitting so pretty because you're not preachers. Preachers are like used car salesmen to them. Oh, they got an ulterior motive. Oh, okay, yeah, preacher. Not going to do it. So look and listen. My point is, all she said was one phrase, and that was, I wish someone would have done that when I was her age. Boom. She gave us an in. She gave us a peek into her life. And that's what you need to do. We need to listen. I wonder how many times God crosses our path with someone. It's like, oh, good. They look. Okay, good. Listen, angels, pray that they listen. Listen. And instead they start talking and, oh, you know what? I've been to Chicago before. Yeah. I've been to the South Side. Whoa, be careful there. Whoa, And we go off on some tangent while the person's about to give us a peek into their heart. And the Lord's up there saying, would you just listen for a second? Would you get out of your selfie existence? And would you just listen to what it is that they have to say? The greatest evangelistic tool that you will ever use is not something that you say, it's what you listen. What you listen to what they say, how you listen. Because when you listen, you earn the right to be heard then. Because then you have a chance to weigh in and to share. You all know Mark Moore that preached here a few weeks ago. How many of y'all remember Mark? Okay. Mark preaches at a church in Arizona. And I preach at that church 6 weekends a year. There's Ashley Wooldridge. He's the lead pastor. And then Mark is a teaching pastor. And then they call me a teaching pastor. And I go out there 6 weekends a year. So we have sermon series planning meetings. And they will conference call me in. And we'll meet for 2 hours. And we'll go through all the upcoming sermons. And whoever's preaching, they kind of talk through their sermon. And there's about 15 people in the room. And then Doofus Dave in Louisville calling in on a conference call. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? You know, you're muted, Dave. Okay. Well, yeah. So I'm on the calls. And so what we do is we walk through the sermons that are coming up. And Ashley will talk about his coming up. This is what I'm thinking about doing. So we're in a series on marriage last January. And so it comes to mind. I'm preaching on commitment. And so I said, I think in the introduction, I'm going to say, you can say that you're going to throw this hand grenade, and I have no problem throwing a hand grenade, but until you pull the pin, you're not really committed, right? Okay? I said, you can say to your buddies, hey, I'll go skydiving with you, but until you actually jump out of the plane, you're not really committed, right? So I go through my whole sermon with them, just kind of getting ideas from all of them. It finishes, and at the end of our meeting, a guy named Ben says, hey, Dave, you still on the line? I said, yeah, I'm right here. He said, hey, I love that idea you had in your introduction where you talked about some of those different examples of commitment. He said, what would really be cool is what if you went skydiving and we did a video crew up there with you and we filmed you skydiving? I said, you're breaking up. I can't hear you. Now, it's not that I don't like heights. I'm just scared of them. And so I kind of laughed. And the second he said this, I could feel my heart rate just skyrocketing. And I'm 2,000 miles away. And he says this. And I could just, my heart was palpitating. I'm like, oh, no, don't go there. So I said, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I said, I don't think I'll probably do it. Oh, no, they all join in, 15 people. Oh, no, you need to do that. Oh, that would be a great illustration. That would be really good. And I said, I said, I don't know we want to spend that much time. It's just a little illustration. And so they kept after me. And I said, you know what? I said, if the other preachers, if Ashley and Mark do it, then I would probably do it. 1 second later, they say, we're in. So I want to show you a video of what happened 3 weeks later. Watch this with me.
Man, we're getting close. You getting nervous?
Yeah. I'm having second thoughts, to be honest with you.
Why would you be nervous? You're a Christian.
Well, I had said verse I kept reading over and over last night that Jesus says in Matthew. He says, lo, I am with you always. Doesn't say anything about high. Oh, we're here, aren't we?
Oh.
Is he okay? He's been in there for 15 minutes.
Been there forever. Stuck on.
Dave?
Yeah.
Time to go.
You can't stay in there, man. There's other people waiting. We gotta go here.
Just nervous. That's not good. That's the rescue. We're crazy. when we checked in there, they said, hey, we're going to take you to 10,000 feet, but if you pay a little bit more, we'll take you to 14,000 feet, and you can free fall for 60 seconds instead of for 40 seconds. And I'm getting ready to say, no, and Mark Moore, oh, yes, we want that. We want that. Yeah, we want a free fall for it. So the little parachute you see just slows you down to 125 miles per hour so that you can actually think. I couldn't think, but they kept saying, yell, talk, and that way you'll be able to breathe. Well, so that's the last thought in my mind as I jump out, okay, yell, talk, and I get out there. I couldn't get anything to come out. Where are my people who have ever skydived before? Put your hands up. Okay, I see that one. Anybody else? Okay, one over here. Yeah, only 2 people have lived to tell about it with us. There's actually about 60 who have done it, but only 3 of us that made it. But the guy who I was attached to, this dude was a character. And his name was Farmer, all right? That was his nickname, and that should have been a clue. Why jump? A guy's specialty is agriculture, not aerodynamics, right? So his name was Farmer, and he was a character. And we're up there, and what they do is they come up behind you, and they pull you back behind, and then he hooks into you. Well, I had never felt him hook into me. And when they open the door for the 10,000 and they kick those people out, then it goes up to 14,000. And I had not, and they opened the door, and I had never felt him connect to me. And so I leaned back and said, Farmer, are we attached? And he said, emotionally? I said, you've used that before, haven't you? Yeah. So he said, yeah, you're all good. And on the way up, I said to him, hey, dude, I said, you never went through the landing thing with me on how to do the landing thing. And he said, you know what? He said, first, let's even see if the chute opens, all right? I'm like, you're killing me. Brother, you're killing me, all right? So he's kind of a rougher dude. And so after we got done, this was on a Thursday, and this is for church on Saturday, Sunday. I said, hey, you go to church anywhere? And he's, no, I don't go to church anywhere. And I said, well, let me tell you, we're going to put you on a screen. There's going to be 30,000 people that are going to see you. And let me tell you, man, I said, you need to come. He said, well, where is it? I said, it's in Peoria. He said, that's an hour away from me. I said, oh, it'll be worth it. I said, I'll buy you a hamburger afterwards, okay? It's amazing how if you buy somebody a hamburger, well, he said, really? I said, yeah. He said, okay. How tough is it to invite somebody to church? You like hamburgers? Yeah, I like hamburgers. Yeah. You want to come to church? Okay, I'm there. All right. So I said, you come with me. Well, the dude comes to church, and he wears a shirt that says Farmer on it. Okay, so I tell the story about him and all this. So after church, he's walking around, I had the skydiving company, and hey, are you Farmer? The guy, yeah, that's me. So we got to eat together. We stayed in touch. That was back at the last week in January. Had 3 meals with him since then. And he's got quite a story. And he said to me in our last conversation in the middle of June, he said, I think the next time you come to Phoenix, he said, I'd like for you to baptize me. And I said, I would love nothing more than to do that, because we've had some really deep spiritual conversations since then. And I said, but I don't know that I want you to wait. I said, I would love to do that, but I said, just please don't wait when you feel like you're ready. If it's when I get there in September, great. But if the Lord impresses that on you, so let me show you a picture I got yesterday. I get this picture yesterday, and get this video. This is yesterday. I get this video at 3 a.m. from Farmer. And I just wrote back and said, I am ecstatic. I said, I'm so glad. And if you could hear, there's probably 20 or 30 people around, and they're clapping and they're cheering for him. And it's so I tell you that story and I show you that video because you don't know where God's going to cross your path. You know, we've become good friends, but if I never take him out to eat when I'm in Phoenix, and he drove an hour and 45 minutes with a traffic jam the last time, and I said, we're going to go out to eat, and I want to hear your whole story. And all I did was listen. And he told me his whole story. And then to kind of just be able to talk after that, God just opens up doors. Here's the key to listening to people. Here's what I want you to write down. Thank you for showing that video and those pictures. Here's the key. The key to listening to people is margin. You have to have margin in your life. I'm not great at having margin in my life. But when I fly out to Phoenix, sometimes I have more margin in my life out there than I have in Kentuckiana because I have less people pulling at me and they don't know when I'm coming in. So I can kind of control my schedule a little bit better. But I have to build margin into my life. And so again, another takeaway for you that you walk away with from today is, okay, can I build some margin into my life so that when something does pop up, when Bree does, we do have a chance to take Bree out to lunch with her niece, and we said, let's do it the week before school starts, and hopefully we can get her niece some clothes for school. I said, let's do it then. So you've got that reason, you've got that opportunity because you have looked, you've been on the lookout, you've listened, and if the margin is in your schedule, it's like, oh, I've got it built in. Lord, you fill it with whatever it is that you want. And maybe you leave a lunch open every week, and you don't know who you're going to have lunch with that day, but God's going to cross your path with someone that you can encourage. Okay? Let's look at the third and the last area, and that is to love on people. So it's a pretty simple outline, right? Again, nothing major here, but think about it. It's looking, being on the lookout. We're going to pray about that. We're going to pray for those opportunities. It's listening. We're going to have margin in our life so that we can take the time to actually listen and it's not rushed. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to love on people. That's how you look like Jesus Christ, is just by loving on people. When you love on people, it's a game changer. John chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. Jesus says, all people will know that you are my followers, you are my disciples by your love for one another. That's how people will know, is by your love for one another. That will be the hallmark distinctive characteristic. Now, there are a variety of ways that we can show love. We talked about leaving a good tip. That's a good way to show love. We talked about listening. One way we like to do it is we send Christmas cards to people. And my Christmas card list is very different than you would think because I collect people all year long for that Christmas card. And I love to send Christmas cards to people that would never expect me to send a Christmas card. And to surprise them, they get a Christmas card. And it's not that there's something special because it's coming from me. It's the fact that, wow, I can't believe that he sent me a Christmas card. We don't know each other that well. I got to know all the people at the post office, because everybody treats people in the post office like trash. Amen. So if you treat all of them like kings and queens, now all of a sudden you have an inroad with them. I sent a Christmas card to every postal worker in the post office, and I'd put a $20 bill in there, $20 in there. I know it looks cheap, but I just would put their name on it. I'd write them a little personal note, and I'd come in. Sometimes now I just bring them Krispy Kreme donuts. They don't know, there's a lot of turnover in there. I just walk in. There's a line of 12 people all angry and mad and cussing, I walk in with Krispy Kreme. They think I'm with DoorDash, I just walk in and say, hey, I said, you guys want some Krispy Kreme donuts? Oh, yeah, all of a sudden, you never see nicer workers at a post office. Oh, yeah. I might not know any of them. I might know a couple of them, and I just hand them the Krispy Kreme donuts with a stack of napkins that I've sneezed on, right? And it's unbelievable. But if you give a Christmas card to somebody, one time, one of the gals that was on the end, she put my Christmas card on the wall. And so people would start talking to her. Say, oh, do you know the Stones? And, oh, yeah, they come in here. Oh, do you go to Southeast? No, what's Southeast? No. Well, that's the church where he works. Oh, really? Yeah. Well, people say, our lots of times they'll say, oh, is this your family? And say, no, that's a guy who comes in here and brings us Krispy Kreme donuts sometimes, okay? So here's my question. If I call them by name and I bring them Krispy Kreme donuts, when Easter rolls around and I invite every one of them to come to one of our Easter services, do you think my odds go up or go down when I invite them? And so I remember one year we had a Japanese chef, Buddhist in the front row. We had a Jewish guy who works at a restaurant. And we had a nail salon lady who was also Buddhist in the front row. And there's my family interspersed with them. Amen. And it's not anything big that was done. It's just building a relationship. And it's just saying, okay, Lord, you've asked us to get close to people who are different than us. And we're here for one reason. And that is to bring glory to you. And if we truly believe that lost people matter to you, then they probably should matter to me. And if we really believe that those who don't accept Jesus Christ will be assigned an eternity in hell, how can I not love them? How can we not look for those opportunities? People say, what's the greatest thing that you've learned when it comes to trying to impact people's lives? And it's not going to sound real spiritual, but it's working at learning people's names. And if you work at learning people's names, God just does some incredible things. Now, I know what we all think. We all say, oh, I'm terrible. I'm terrible at names. I can't remember my wife's name. And we all have our stories. How many of y'all feel like you're bad at names? You're pretty bad at that. Yeah, right? Is that orange that you're wearing right there? Red? See, I'm colorblind too. I got all sorts. I can't tell a dollar store from a Dollar General, and I'm colorblind, all right? What's your name? Janet. Janet? Yes. Janet, would you stand up for me? Sean, would you go get 15 people from back rows? Okay? Take Janet outside. You got a timer? You got some type of timer, Sean? I know you can't do two things at once. You good? You got, yeah. Janet, I want you to go out with Sean. He's going to grab 15 people. You guys are going to go outside. Let's go this way. Give Janet a hand, okay? Hey, Janet, when you come back in here, you're going to say the first name of 15 people. We're going to put them right up front here, okay? You said you're terrible at names, so we're going to put you to the test. 15 people, you've got 5 minutes. Janet, one last thing. Janet, are you independently wealthy? Are you wealthy? Are you a millionaire 2 or 3 times over? I've got $200 American for you. If you can get 15 names in 5 minutes, okay? All right? Give her a big hand. She's on her way out. And feel free to go outside if it's less noise for you. Okay, so they should come back in 5 minutes. Lots of times people just leave and say, yeah, we've watched him cry enough. Let's just head on over to Cracker Barrel, right? So I know how we all are. We all say, oh, I can't do it. But I'm telling you what, the whole key to everything we've talked about today is intentionality. If you are intentional. So if you looked in my phone, I have the names of the TSA agents. I have the names of every restaurant that I go to, of the workers that I've met. After this is over, if you looked, I would go through, it's just one after another. So there's one restaurant here, I've got 30 names down. Because, it's a transient group. Remember? They're there and then they're not there. And then all of a sudden they pop up at Texas Roadhouse. Oh, what are you doing over here? Well, So I've got all these names down in here. So before I walk in the post office, I'm going to review those names. All I did is put it in your notes. Your phone has a notes section, okay? You can take notes on sermons if you'd like in there. Maybe not. All right. But you keep track of those names, and then before you go in, you just review your names. And guess what? After a while, you don't need to review the names because you know them. If you meet a new person, say, hey, I haven't met you. How long have you been working here? Well, it's my second day. Well, great. What's your name? I'm Sally. Well, good to meet you, Sally. You get back in your car. Sally. Blonde hair. 5'4". Tattoo that says Malcolm on her cheek with a heart on it, You put whatever it is that's going to help you, okay? And then you're ready the next time, and there's no sweeter sound to a person than hearing their own name. Jesus does it all throughout the New Testament. Think about some of the names that he says. He says Lazarus. What a sweet time to hear your name called out when you're dead, right? And Jesus calls out Lazarus. What's so awesome about that? Well, if he hadn't called him by name, everyone in the cemetery would have walked out. Okay? And so he calls him by name. There's time and time again, he calls Simon Peter. He changes, names are so important to him, he changes the name. He changes it from Simon, wishy-washy, to Petros, Peter, rock, and changes his identity. Think about Zacchaeus. He doesn't say, hey, short stuff, come on down. He says Zacchaeus, and when he says Zacchaeus is up there saying, he knows my name, he knows my name. There's something special when you call somebody by name. There's a gal who comes to Northside, and she used to be a Delta agent. And I saw her the last time I was here. I haven't seen her in years. And I was here last summer. And she came walking up, and I said, Emily, you think that made her feel good? When I said, Emily, you think it made Jacqueline feel good when I hollered out Jacqueline's name? If I say Krista's name, you think Krista feels better? Or if I say, oh, hey, you in the sweater, which one do you think feels better? When all of a sudden you say that name, it means something. There's a relationship. There's intimacy. You've gone from being an acquaintance to now being a friend. So let me give you 5 things that can help you learn names. And yes, this can help you in your job. It can help you in a lot of different ways. But more importantly, it can help you love on people. Number 1, when you meet somebody, repeat. There's all sorts of things where, they'll say it over and over again. They'll say, oh, Sean, good to meet you, Sean. Sean, how are you doing? Sean, are you having a good day? Sean. They say it about sometimes, so finally Sean goes, shut up, right? So don't be obnoxious about it, but say it to make certain you got it. With Janet, I wanted to make certain that I had Janet's name right. So, I'm getting old, so was it Janice? Was it, Jeanette? So I said, Janet, right? Yeah, it's Janet. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that. Okay. Secondly, I'm going to record it. I'm going to write it down. I used to do it on paper. Now I do it in my phone. So I'm going to record it somewhere. I'm going to put it down. So this is where it was. He's got black hair. He wears glasses that remind me of, and I say whose glasses reminds to. Here's the third thing. I'm going to review it. This is where most people stop the process. They're like, okay, I'm out. So what I would do when I worked at Southeast is I would review the names of the people that I had met the month before, for 4 weekends before. And I would go through, and on an average, I would usually have 20 to 25 names written down each weekend. And so you're writing those names down. You might see them again, you might not. But in a big church like Northside, if you meet a visitor and then you run into them 2 weeks later and you holler their name out, and they're talking, well, I've been visiting that big church. And all of a sudden you say, Steve. Oh, he must not be talking to me because I don't know anybody here. Steve, hey, I'm Dave. I met you 2 weeks ago. Oh, they heard their name in a place. It's unbelievable. It's a game changer for them. And this big church, Northside, just became real personal. With that, come on up, my friends. Let's see what you got. Come on up. I'm going to line you up right over here. You get in any order that you want. Let's come right down. You want to come up? It's up to you, Sean. It's wherever you want. Oh, I got to see if I got $200. No. I don't carry $200, so I made certain that I had $200 this morning. Janet, how you feeling? Nervous. That's good. We want you to be nervous. We want you to be nervous. Okay, you stand out there. You're in a good order. Man alive, the hits just keep on coming. How much? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Janet, it's all yours.
Sean, Tommy, Tom, Heather, Jenny, Jen, Denise, Deborah, Hank, Charlotte, Kathy, Lydia, Steve, Laura, and Randy.
Boom! Wow! She nailed it. Yes! I don't think she even needed 5 minutes, did she? How long? How would you think she could have done it in 3? Yeah. 2? She did it in 2 minutes. What have y'all been smoking pot out there? What have you been doing? Man, that is unbelievable. Janet, come right over here. We prayed. Oh, that's smart. Just a second here.
No, I'm not.
No, you have to. No, you have to take it. Okay? They got a camera coming in any minute, okay? All right? I know Northside does things professional. Oh, there it is, right there. There we go. Look right back there. Take your money. Now, hold it and look right back there. Great job. You did great. Were you nervous?
Yes.
Now, quick question for you, okay? What did you think when I said we're going to take 15 people out there? What was your first thought? Did you think, oh, I can't do
it?
Yeah, I can't do it. Okay. When I said $200 American dollars, did that help you?
No, not really.
Okay, all righty. I'm having it back. Good. All right. Who would like? You have to take it. You have to take it. It's right there. It's on your seat. It's right there. Give them a hand. You all were awesome. Great job. Sometimes when I do that, if I pull a college student up, I'll say to them, did you think you could do it? No. You think you could do it? And I said, just as you were getting to the door, when I said, I'll give you $200 if you do, I said, did that motivate you? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's probably the only reason I was able to do it, right? But here's what you have to understand. We have to get to the point to where people matter so much to us and we value them so much that if we remember a name, we have just honored them above ourselves. And you made a friend. You can't tell me that those 15 people, when they see Janet, aren't going to say, hey, Janet, and she's going to say, what's up? But if she were to go back and she were to write down those names, and if Tom happened to be by Tommy in the lobby at church, we'd have a good chance. But you got to come up with little things. So here's what I do. I make a game of it. And I'll work at it. And I miss a whole bunch. But let's keep going through our things we were talking about. Repeat, record, and then review. So we're going to look over that. When they were coming in, what I'd say is I would review over the last 4 weeks before. Why? Because if I stumble onto one of those people and I just cross paths with them, sometimes you know what I would do? I'd see somebody and I'd say, oh, what's her name? And so what I would do is I'd run up to my office and I'd find that bulletin that I'd written it on, and I'd find it, and then I would go hang out at that door that they had to walk out of the sanctuary. Just be Bible. Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Oh, hey, Bill, Susie, how y'all doing? Oh, and then I go back to it, and they're like, oh, he remembered our name. Now, I don't want them to think, oh, he's incredible at names. I want them to associate with this church. Somebody cares about me. And if they care enough to learn my name, maybe they care about my story. And if they care about my story, maybe they care about my soul. So we're going to repeat. We're going to repeat. We're going to record. We're going to review it. And then we're going to risk it. Ooh, this is when it gets tough. Remember when you took the ACT test? And they always say, go with your first response that you have. You know, I don't know. Close my, you know. I wasn't real good on the ACT thing. But risk it. Sometimes I have mental blocks. I have mental blocks on Heathers and Debbies, okay? Just the way God created me. I have a block on a Heather and a Debbie. So sometimes you know what I'll say? I'll say, hey, does your name start with an H or a D? And they'll say, D? It's Debbie, isn't it? Well, yeah. I've never had anybody say, well, big deal. Yeah, you narrowed it down to 2 letters of the alphabet. You know, I had to help you. No one has ever said that, okay? So you risk it. You go for it. You know, here's usually what happens. You know, you say, okay, I met Krista. Okay, I see Krista tomorrow. And Krista walks past me, and I'm like, oh, I think it's Krista. I don't know. It might be Crystal. No, maybe it's Krista. No, I don't know. And then she walks past. She goes, hey, Dave, how are you? And I go, hey, how are you? Good to see you. Did you like the seminar yesterday? Yeah, I liked it. Walked off. And then I go over to somebody and say, hey, what's your name? They go, it's Krista. I'm like, oh, you're so mad. Why didn't you just go for it? What's the worst she's going to do? If I say, it's Krista, right? And she says, no, it's Crystal. I'm going to become a Buddhist now. You know, no. No one has ever said that, right? There's instead going to say, oh, you were close or whatever. But risk it. I'm telling you, 8 times out of 10, you're going to get it. Repeat, record, review, risk, and retain. That's what will happen. You will retain the name. You'll learn it. And it will mean so much. It will mean so much to them. You know, if you think about it, my favorite time when Jesus called someone by name was in the garden after he's come back to life. It's a really cool story because Jesus is there and Mary Magdalene is crying and she's upset and the tomb is empty and they're confused, you know, are these angels real? You know, he's risen. I don't know about any of this. And she thinks Jesus is the gardener. She sees him off to the side and Jesus has a conversation with her. And he says, who is it that you're looking for? And he says, you know, if you've taken him, just tell me where he is, okay? And then Jesus says one word. He says, Mary. And when she hears his name and his voice, everything changes. Get this. She didn't fall at his knees when he spoke an entire line to her. Same voice. Wasn't disguising his voice. What was the difference? It's when the name was said. When she heard him say her name, everything changed. So look for those special opportunities that you have. John Maxwell, I've got to hear him speak a few times. And one time he said this. He said, today I will add value to someone's life who I do not know and who doesn't know me and who can never repay me and who I will never see again. Amen. So how can you approach every day is how can I give value to someone where there's no benefit for me? There's nothing that I get out of it. How can I honor someone above myself? How is it that I can go out of my way to make someone's day special? Here's the key to loving people. I don't know if I put this on the screen, but the key to loving on people is you're imitating Christ. That's the key. When you're loving on people, you are imitating Christ. And let me share with you the motivation, and we'll wrap up. The motivation for listening, looking, and loving people. What's the motivation? Why is it we do it? I'm going to give you 2 reasons, and you have to write these down. Number 1, our motivation is to show the love of Jesus. We are to be ambassadors for Christ. We're to love others. That's our hallmark characteristic. So we're going to show the love of Jesus. And then the second reason that we're going to listen, look, and love is because we want to lead lost people into a saved relationship with Jesus Christ. Okay? Both of those things are what motivate us. Let me close by telling you, I got a story of my brother, and I got a story of my daughter, and I'm not sure which one I want to do. I'll do both, and I'll do them quickly, but I promised you 11:30. So my brother Jeff preaches in Indiana, up north outside of Cincinnati. And I don't know of anybody who loves people and puts into practice what I've been talking about today better than my brother does. A few years ago, a waitress was having a rough day, and Jeff asked if she was doing okay, and she said, "Well, I'm just worried about my grandson." I said, "What's up with your grandson?" He's in prison, and he doesn't have many visitors. And Jeff said, "What's his name? And I'll be praying for him." And she gave his name. She said, "Would you mind if I visited him sometime?" She said, "Oh, no, he's 3 hours away from here." But Jeff got his name and made some phone calls to the place and went and visited him. And he did so each month for the next 3 years. And he began sharing Christ with him. And he began discipling him. And when the gentleman was released, my brother baptized him because their church had just kind of adopted him. But the month before he was released, after being there for 3 years, Jeff was going to stop making those long drives of 3 hours one way and 3 hours back. And he got a letter from a guy in the same prison the last month, totally unconnected from the first guy. And Jeff later found out that the guy got the county newspaper, and he saw an ad for Jeff's church, and he wrote asking for some biblical materials. And Jeff said, "Well," I wrote back and said, "I'm going to be down there, and I'll try to visit you when I visit another guy." And so after he visited with the first guy, this other guy came in. They brought him in. He was escorted into the visitation area, and Jeff introduced himself to him, and they sat down. Now, you have to understand, when this place at the Correctional Institute, when you visit someone there, at each table there are 2 blue seats, and there's 1 red seat. And the red seat faces the direction of where the armed guard faces. And the guests are to sit in the blue seats, while the inmate sits in the red one. But when the guy came out and met with Jeff, he sat next to Jeff in a blue seat. And the guard started yelling at him. And Jeff said, "Hey," he said, "I think you probably need to move over to your seat, or you're going to get in some trouble with that guard." And the guy was surprised and embarrassed. He said, "Oh, okay." And he moved over to the other seat. And he said to Jeff, he said, "Sorry." He said, "I didn't know that." He said, "You're the first visitor I've ever had." But through the course of conversation, Jeff found out that the guy had been in there for over a year and never had a visitor. But he'll learn where to sit, because my brother is committed to meet with him every month and to disciple him and to pray with him and to encourage him, because that's my brother. And Jeff would tell you that if he didn't love Jesus, he wouldn't make that drive, and he probably wouldn't build that friendship. But he does, and so he's constantly meeting people wherever he goes. Let me tell you about my daughter. We were in Houston for Thanksgiving with her last Thanksgiving, and her name's Sadie. And the day before Thanksgiving, there was a knock at the door, and it was a neighbor. She was about 50 years old, and she was bringing some cupcakes for Sadie and her husband and for our granddaughter. And so invited her to come in, and we all met her, and she gave the cupcakes to my 3-year-old granddaughter and to Sadie, and we made small talk with her for a few minutes. And there's that moment when there's just that awkward silence, and we thought she was about to leave. And, there's just kind of that lull in the conversation. And the woman starts crying. And she comes over and hugs my daughter. She says, I just wanted you to know how grateful I am for you this Thanksgiving. And thank you for reaching out to me. And Sadie said, well, we've been praying for you, and we'll continue to pray for you. The lady left and closed the door, and we kind of stood there quietly for a second, and we asked her what the situation was, and she said, well, a couple weeks before that, there had been some ambulances and police cars that came down our street, and the ambulance stayed there. And she said, all of our neighbors, we all kind of came out in the front yard, and it was getting dark, and we didn't know which house it was. It was about 10 or 12 houses way down the street. And said the ambulances were there, and when the sirens were turned off, all you could hear was a woman crying and a woman just wailing. So Sadie said, I waited a couple of days, and I decided I was going to walk down and try a couple of houses and just try to see if I could find out how the family was doing and if they needed anything. She said the very first house that I tried, a woman came to the door, and Sadie said, I said to her, I live down the street, and I know there were some ambulances down around one of these houses a few nights ago. I'm just checking to see if there's anything I can do. And this woman began immediately crying and said, my husband, he's a principal. He's 52 years old. He was working out in the yard, and he had a heart attack, and he passed away. And Sadie got to minister to her, and Sadie got to check on her, and Sadie got to bring her a meal, and Sadie continues to check on her. So I would just say to you, Sadie loves her neighbors. Do you love your neighbors? Do you look for those opportunities where you just go that step beyond? And it's a good step to pray for whoever that person is, but just to go one more step beyond and say, I'm going to look for that person. I'm going to listen to what's going on in their life, and then I'm going to love on them. So you have a decision to make. You've heard 90 minutes of an old man rambling on with a lot of different things today, and you have to make a decision of how you will be different when you walk out of here. Will you be different when you leave here than when you came in here? Crawford Loritz says, at birth, you look like your parents. At death, you look like your decisions. What will your decision be in how you honor others above yourself? Our Father in heaven, we turn this over to you, and we are convinced and we believe beyond any shadow of a doubt that if we begin to pray that prayer and say, okay, Lord, cross my path with people, bring people into my life, we are convinced that you will do just that. And so our prayer now turns to when you do that, will we have eyes to see? Will we have ears to hear? And will we have a heart to love as Jesus did? It's in his name that we pray. Amen. I'll see you this weekend. Thank you for being here.